Dear friends, it is a pleasure to welcome you to another episode of Battle Diary: The Ukraine War. In today's video, we will address the challenging path to achieving peace in Ukraine without putting Vladimir Putin in a difficult position. When Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, his goal was clear: to kick down the Ukrainian door with a devastating show of force. He launched the invasion from 5 main fronts, mobilizing more than 150,000 troops, tens of thousands of vehicles and armored vehicles, and accompanying it all with a shower of hundreds of missiles that destroyed the country's main defensive infrastructure. Putin believed that this immense show of force would be enough to convince the Ukrainians not to engage in defense. After all, they were facing the second largest military power on the planet, attacking them from all sides. He sought to repeat what he had done in 2014, when he invaded and annexed Crimea, receiving only notes of repudiation from the international community. However, as the Daily News has shown, the invasion did not turn out as planned by Putin. After 16 months of war, Ukraine managed to retake 54% of the territories invaded by Russia in February 2022. Still, 18% of the country remains in the hands of the invader, which naturally displeases Ukrainians who long for the complete liberation of their country. The Russian invasion has created 4 major support groups. The first is led by Belarus, led by dictator Alexander Lukashenko, and is supported by Syria, Iran, and North Korea, countries that are supposedly sending troops and vehicles to the war. The second group is made up of quiet supporters of Russia, such as China, which some sources say is also sending vehicles to Russia, and South Africa, a country accused by the United States of supplying arms to the Russians, although the South Africans vehemently deny this accusation. The third group is made up of neutral countries that tend to lean toward one side. India and Brazil are examples of this group. The fourth group consists of supporters of Ukraine, such as the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Italy, military powers that are natural rivals of Russia in different areas, especially the United States and the United Kingdom, for whom the Russian invasion of Ukraine represents an opportunity to weaken Russia's military power. Thus, the war has turned into a real proxy war, with Russia fighting not only against the Ukrainians, but also against Ukrainians armed, trained and financed by several other countries, many of them NATO members. These countries and blocs are not just defending Ukraine to prevent aggression against a democracy, they also seek to weaken Russia by forcing it to expend significant resources that could be used to pressure NATO on other fronts. While Russia did not lose 200,000 soldiers in the invasion, as Ukraine claims, certainly tens of thousands of Russian soldiers were killed or wounded, in addition to significant losses in vehicles and aircraft. These casualties represent a reduction in Russia's ability to use these soldiers, vehicles, and aircraft against US and NATO interests in other parts of the world. However, the problem with this approach is that some countries believe that the war can only end with Russia's total defeat. Although Russia has suffered defeats in past wars, such as in Afghanistan in the 1980s and in Chechnya in 1996 against separatist rebels, an eventual Russian defeat in Ukraine would not be entirely unprecedented. However, Putin has put all his chips on this war because he knows that a defeat would mean the end of his regime. For some countries, this approach is not ideal, as it could lead to an endless conflict, a war that could go on for decades. This would be fueled by the desire of the United States, the United Kingdom, and NATO to keep Russia trapped in a dead-end conflict, and by the Putin regime becoming increasingly isolated from the West and dependent on positive results in the war to stay in power. At this point, another approach to ending the conflict emerges, which argues that the war does not necessarily need to end with the complete defeat of Russia. This approach argues that Putin should not be cowed, as this could lead him to resort to even more drastic and devastating alternatives than he has already applied in his invasion. Some leaders, such as French President Emmanuel Macron, advocate such an approach in Europe. They propose offering Putin an honorable exit, a consolation prize that he can present as a victory in the war with Ukraine, in exchange for quick and virtually immediate entry into NATO and the European Union. Ukraine's membership in NATO would serve to deter future Russian attempts to invade, while membership in the European Union would allow for the country's post-war economic and industrial reconstruction and recovery. While no world leader likes to use this terminology, in practice, they would be trying to convince Putin to trade some parts of the currently occupied Ukrainian regions for a plan to integrate quickly into NATO and the European Union, ensuring peace for the rest of Ukraine and resources for its reconstruction. However, Putin also needs to be convinced to receive much less than he hoped to gain from the invasion, such as Ukraine's recognition of the loss of Crimea and the regions in the east that are currently under Russian occupation. The big problem is that, publicly at least, neither Zelensky nor Putin are willing to consider such proposals. Zelensky has made it clear during the offensive that Ukraine will accept nothing less than Russian withdrawal from all occupied areas, including Crimea. For his part, Putin has repeatedly stated that his special military operation, as he refers to the war, will only be considered complete when all of its objectives are achieved, including the demilitarization of Ukraine and the formally internationally recognized annexation of all regions currently occupied by Russia. However, the world knows that both Zelensky and Putin cannot fight forever. Zelensky knows that international support for Ukraine's defense in the war may end, as indicated by statements from leaders such as Donald Trump, who has stated several times that if elected in 2026, his first step will be to stop aid from the United States. Likewise, Putin also knows that Russia cannot fight indefinitely. Today's Russia is not the Soviet Russia of 1941, and Putin knows that except for North Korea, Nicaragua and Iran, eventually Venezuela, he cannot count on the full and unconditional support of great powers like China. They both want peace and an end to war, but they don't know how to express that will. Thank you to everyone who followed this video about the war in Ukraine. Your dedication to seeking information and understanding the challenges faced by Ukrainians is very valuable. We hope you found this content informative and enlightening. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave your like, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel to receive more updates on the war in Ukraine. Thank you for being part of our community and for your continued support. Together, we can raise awareness about this important issue and contribute to a more informed world. Until the next video.